The night sky above the mining colony was silent, except for the soft hum of engines and the wind brushing against the metallic towers. Captain Elias Ward sat alone in his small ship, the Horizon, staring at the empty stars. He had been a space miner for years, strong, quiet, and tired. Humans rarely came this far anymore. The edge of the galaxy was cold, dangerous, and forgotten. He checked his scanner one last time before turning in for the night. But then a faint signal blinked on the screen. A weak distress call. Barely audible, but there. Elias frowned. "That's impossible," he muttered. No colonies were listed in this region. The signal repeated in a soft tone, followed by a strange sound. It almost sounded like crying. His chest tightened. It wasn't static. It wasn't noise, it was a voice. "Please, someone, help me." The words were mixed with strange alien sounds, but the desperation was clear. Elias hesitated for a long moment. He'd learned not to chase random signals. Pirates often used fake distress calls to trap travelers. Still, something about this voice felt different. It wasn't a trick. It was pain. He leaned closer to the speaker. "This is Captain Ward of the human ship Horizon. Identify yourself." No answer. Just another sob followed by silence. Something deep inside him, the part that still remembered what it meant to care, whispered, "Go." He sighed and activated the thrusters. "All right then," he said to himself. "Let's see who's crying in the dark." 2 hours later, the Horizon reached the source of the signal, a shattered moon orbiting a dying red star. The surface was covered with dust and broken metal. His scanners detected faint life signs. One, maybe two. Elias landed near a crashed alien ship. It looked old, twisted, half buried in the ground. Smoke rose from its broken engines. He grabbed his helmet and stepped outside, boots sinking into the gray dust. The silence was heavy. Then he heard it, a weak, trembling cry coming from inside the wreck. He followed the sound, flashlight sweeping over alien markings and shattered glass. Then he saw her, an alien woman, her skin pale blue, eyes large and filled with tears. She was lying beside a small, broken pod that looked like it once held something, or someone. Her breathing was slow. "Human," she whispered, her voice fragile. Elias froze. She knew his kind. He kneeled beside her. "Yes, don't move. You're hurt." The alien woman tried to speak but coughed instead, her hands trembling as she reached toward the small pod beside her. Inside it was nothing, just the remains of a blanket torn and burned. "My child," she whispered. "Gone." They took him. Elias felt a cold weight drop in his chest. He didn't understand who they were, but the pain in her voice said enough. She had lost something, someone she loved more than her own life. He looked around. There were scorch marks, footprints, not hers. Someone had been here. Someone had taken the child. Elias clenched his jaw. This wasn't just a crash. It was a raid. He tried to lift her gently, but she weakly pushed his arm away. "No time," she said. "Please, promise me. Find him." Her fingers tightened around his wrist. "They'll kill him. Experiment. Use him." Elias swallowed hard. "Who are they?" Her eyes flickered with fear. "The collectors," she whispered. "They come for all who are weak. They don't care what species." Then her hand slipped from his and she went still. Elias sat there in the quiet wreckage, his mind spinning. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her world. But he knew the sound of a mother's last plea. He stared at the empty pod. He had a choice, leave this madness behind, or go after the child of an alien he'd never met. Most humans wouldn't have thought twice. But Elias Ward wasn't most humans. He stood slowly, eyes burning with a fire he hadn't felt in years. He looked at the stars and whispered, "All right, little one. I'll find you." He turned back toward his ship. Behind him, the alien mother's body lay still. But her cry, her final plea, seemed to echo through the void. And though Elias didn't know it yet, that one choice, to save a child not of his own kind, would soon shake the entire galaxy. The engines of the Horizon roared softly as Captain Elias Ward stared into the black sea of space. The alien mother's voice still echoed in his mind. "Find him. They'll kill him." He had buried her beneath the broken moon's dust, marking the grave with a piece of metal from her ship. Now, as the stars shimmered outside his window, he opened his scanner again. The child's life sign was weak, faint, but still there. moving away fast toward the dark regions known as the Collector Zone. No human dared to go there. The Collectors were a mystery, part machine, part living creature. They were known to raid lost ships, steal technology, and capture anything rare. To them, life was just another experiment. Elias leaned back in his chair and whispered, "What am I doing?" He wasn't a hero. He was a miner, a drifter. He didn't owe anyone anything, especially not an alien child. But then he remembered her eyes, the way she held his hand before she died. He couldn't forget that. "All right, kid," he said quietly, turning the ship toward the dark. "Let's bring you home." Hours passed as the horizon entered the uncharted region. The stars here seemed different, twisted, dim, like they were afraid to shine. Elias kept scanning for signals. Suddenly, his radar beeped. A large vessel appeared in the distance, huge, black, and silent. It wasn't broadcasting any ID. That meant only one thing: collector ship. Elias killed the lights on his ship and drifted closer, hiding behind a small asteroid. Through his scope, he saw the ship's surface covered with strange symbols, like runes carved into metal. Small drones floated around it, scanning space for movement. He held his breath. One wrong move and he'd be turned to space dust. Then he saw it, a small blue pod being carried inside the collector ship by robotic arms. His heart jumped. It looked just like the broken one from the crash site. "The child," he whispered. He knew he couldn't fight them head on. The collectors had technology that could crush a human ship in seconds. He needed a plan. Elias opened his cargo bay and pulled out an old stealth drone, a relic from his mining days. He'd used it to sneak past patrols before. Now it would have to do something far more dangerous. He uploaded a hacking program. Old, unstable, but maybe good enough to open a small door in the collector's defense grid. Then he launched it. The drone floated through the dark, invisible to most scanners. Elias watched on his screen as it slipped closer and closer to the collector ship. His hands were sweating. The signal flickered, then connection established. "Yes," he whispered, a small grin forming. The drone hacked a service port on the collector ship and uploaded the virus. A few moments later, a section of the ship's shield flickered, a small gap just big enough for the horizon to pass through. Elias didn't think twice. He pushed the throttle and the ship glided forward like a shadow. He slipped through the gap unseen. Inside, the view was terrifying. Dark metal corridors, glowing red lights, strange noises echoing through the hull. He landed quietly in a cargo bay and stepped out, blaster ready. The air smelled like burnt metal and oil. Strange, half-living machines crawled along the walls. They ignored him, focused on their endless repairs. Elias followed the faint signal from his scanner. It led him through a narrow hallway, down to a chamber filled with glass tubes. Inside each tube floated creatures, and some looked human, others alien, all lifeless. His stomach turned. "Monsters," he whispered, then he heard it, a soft whimper. He turned, and there it was, a small containment unit glowing blue. Inside was a tiny alien child, pale skin like its mother, small arms, closed eyes. Alive. Elias rushed forward, typing commands into his datapad to override the lock. The system resisted, sending warnings in alien symbols. He pressed harder, faster. "Come on, open!" Suddenly, alarms screamed through the chamber. Red lights flashed. The system had detected him. "Unauthorized presence detected," a cold, robotic voice said. Elias pulled his blaster and fired at the lock. The door burst open and he grabbed the small child gently. The child stirred, weak but breathing. Then he heard footsteps, heavy, metallic, getting closer. "Time to go," he muttered, running toward his ship. Behind him, mechanical voices shouted commands in a language he didn't understand. He raced through the corridors, holding the child close. Blaster fire echoed behind him, but he didn't stop. He dove into his ship, slammed the door shut, and hit the thrusters. The horizon shot out of the collector ship just as explosions erupted inside. The virus had spread. The massive vessel trembled and broke apart. Elias leaned back, breathing hard. He looked down at the small alien child in his arms, tiny fingers clutching his sleeve. "Got you," he said softly. "You're safe now." But deep down he knew this was only the beginning. The collectors would come for him. And this child was not ordinary. Something about its eyes, glowing faintly blue, made Elias realize the galaxy had just changed and he was right in the middle of it. The hum of the horizon filled the quiet cabin as Captain Elias Ward watched the small alien child sleep. Wrapped in a soft blanket, the child looked peaceful, but something about him was different. His tiny hands glowed faintly, leaving trails of blue light in the air. Elias rubbed his tired eyes. "What are you, little one?" he whispered. He had scanned the child's vitals, and the results made no sense. The heart rate, the brain activity, even the cell structure. None of it matched any species in the galactic registry. It was as if this child had been made. A soft beeping pulled his attention. The computer flashed a warning. Unknown energy detected. The source? The child. Elias leaned closer. The glow from the boy's hands was pulsing faster, spreading across his body. Elias stepped back, unsure what to do. Then the child suddenly gasped, eyes opening wide, glowing like stars. A wave of light filled the cabin. The ship's systems flickered, alarms screamed, and the lights went out for a full 5 seconds. When they came back on, everything was silent again. The child was awake, staring at Elias with calm, almost knowing eyes. Elias knelt slowly, trying not to frighten him. "Hey there, easy. It's okay. You're safe now." The boy tilted his head, then spoke. Not in words, but in a soft voice that echoed inside Elias's mind. "You saved me." Elias froze. "You can speak?" "Inside my head?" The boy nodded weakly. "My name is Kale." That was all Elias needed to realize. This child wasn't just special. He was something far beyond what humans had ever seen. For hours, Elias listened as Kale tried to explain. His thoughts slow and broken like a young child's. He didn't know where he was from, not exactly, but he remembered the collectors. They had taken him and his mother because of what he was. "They wanted to use me," Kyle said softly, his voice trembling. "They said I can make stars, or destroy them." Elias frowned. "Make stars?" Kale looked out the window at the dark space. His eyes shimmered faintly. And then, to Elias's shock, a single bright spark appeared outside the window. A flicker of light in the emptiness. Elias's heart stopped. "You did that?" Kale nodded, tired. "I don't know how. I just feel it." Elias leaned back, trying to process what he'd just seen. A child who could create light, maybe even energy, out of nothing. No wonder the collectors wanted him. If someone controlled that kind of power, they could rule entire galaxies. He looked at Kale again, just a scared child, clutching the blanket. Elias felt a strange warmth inside. He didn't care what kind of power Kale had. To him, the boy was just a kid who needed someone. "You're safe with me," Elias said softly. "I promise." But deep down, he knew safety was an illusion. The collectors wouldn't stop. Hours later, as the ship drifted toward a quiet nebula to hide, the radar beeped again. Elias's stomach tightened. Multiple signals, fast. He checked the screen. 3 collector ships closing in. "They found us," he whispered. Kyle's eyes opened, sensing the fear in Elias's heart. "They want me," he said quietly. "They can feel me." Elias rushed to the controls. "Then we'll make sure they don't get you." He pushed the engines to full power. The horizon shot through the nebula, twisting between glowing clouds of dust and light. Lasers flashed behind them, lighting up space. Elias maneuvered hard, dodging shot after shot. "Hold on, Kale," he shouted. But one beam grazed the ship, shaking it violently. Sparks flew from the control panel. Elias gritted his teeth, steering through the chaos. Then Kale stood up, his small frame trembling. His eyes glowed brighter. "I can help," he said. "Kyle, no." Elias tried to stop him, but the boy raised his hands. The entire cabin filled with light again. The ship's scanners overloaded, alarms went crazy, and then silence. Outside, the collector ships froze mid-chase. Their engines flickered out. One by one, they drifted into the void like dead ghosts. Elias stared in disbelief. "What did you do?" Kale's voice was soft. "I told them to sleep." Then he collapsed. Elias caught him in his arms, heart racing. The boy was burning with fever, breathing fast. Whatever he did had drained him completely. He laid Kale down and wrapped him tighter in the blanket. "You're safe," Elias whispered, though his voice shook. "Rest, I've got you." He looked out at the drifting collector ships, all silent, all dark. The boy had done that. A child no older than 5. Elias knew now that Kale wasn't just powerful. He was dangerous, even to himself. And if the collectors knew what he could do, Every faction, every empire in the galaxy would soon be hunting for him too. Elias looked at the stars and muttered, "Guess we're both in this now, kid." He didn't realize then that Kale's power, born from something ancient and forgotten, would soon awaken forces across the galaxy that had slept for 1,000 years. And humanity, once ignored by the greater races, was about to stand at the center of it all. The stars around the horizon were silent again. The 3 collector ships drifted like metal corpses, their lights long gone. Captain Elias Ward stared at them through the glass, still trying to understand what he had witnessed. A child, barely old enough to speak, had just silenced warships that terrorized whole systems. Elias turned to look at Kale, still sleeping in the small bunk, his skin faintly glowing blue under the dim cabin lights. The boy looked peaceful, but the air around him pulsed softly like invisible waves moving through the ship. Elias rubbed his face. "You're gonna get me killed, kid," he whispered. But deep inside, he wasn't angry. He felt something strange, pride. The next morning, he began scanning the ship's systems. Half of them were burned out from Kale's outburst. Power levels unstable, shields offline, and long-range comms fried. It would take days to fix, he sighed. "Well, we're officially stranded in the middle of nowhere." Kale stirred in his sleep, opening tired eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt your ship." Elias looked back, smiling softly. "You didn't, you saved us." Kale smiled weakly, then looked down. "I saw things when I used the light. I didn't just make them sleep. I touched their minds." Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" Kale's voice shook. "They weren't alive. Not like us. Their minds were dark, empty. Machines that dream of being alive." Elias sat quietly, realizing how dangerous these collectors really were. Machines that stole life to make more of themselves. But before he could say anything, the ship's console beeped. He turned quickly. A new signal was coming through. A massive energy spike spreading across light years. "What the hell?" he muttered. The scanners showed a pattern, the same blue pulse that Kyle had released. But it wasn't just around them anymore. It was moving, fast, through space. Elias zoomed out the map, and his heart froze. The signal wasn't stopping. It was spreading across the galaxy like a storm. Kale watched, confused. "Did I do that?" Elias didn't answer right away. "Looks like you just woke up the entire galaxy, kid." Hours later, deep within the Orion sector, massive space stations and alien ships picked up the same energy pulse. In the Zir Dominion, a council of lizard-like leaders stared at the readings. "This energy," one hissed. "It matches the myth of the starborn child." Across the galaxy, in the golden halls of the Tavari Empire, priests chanted around glowing orbs. "The prophecy returns," their leader said. "The child of creation has awakened." And far beyond them, in the cold metal heart of the collector hive, red lights flickered to life. A voice echoed from the darkness. "Target located. Retrieval priority. Absolute." Back aboard the Horizon, Elias was unaware that hundreds of ships were now scanning for them. He only knew that something big had happened, something he couldn't control. He worked in silence, repairing circuits while Kyle sat quietly beside him. "Elias," Kyle said softly. "When my light touched the stars, I felt something watching." Elias looked up. "Watching? Like what?" Kale hesitated. "Old, very old. Like a voice without a body. It said, 'You're not ready.'" Elias stopped what he was doing, staring at him. "You sure that wasn't just a dream?" Kale shook his head. "No, it was real. It felt like the galaxy itself spoke to me." Elias didn't know what to say. He'd seen strange things in deep space. Wormholes, dying suns, entire planets swallowed by time. But this was different. This was beyond science. That night, while Kyle slept again, Elias opened the ship's log and recorded a message. Not for command, not for anyone. Just for himself. Day 14, found alien child named Kale. Shows signs of telepathic ability and energy control. Possible living energy source. Signal released during defense event. Unknown origin, now spreading through multiple systems. He's just a boy, but every instinct tells me this kid is important. Maybe too important. He stopped the recording and looked out at the nebula ahead. He could see faint flickers of blue lightning inside it. like the galaxy was alive and breathing. Suddenly, the ship's proximity alert screamed. Elias jumped to the console. Multiple readings appeared, not collector ships this time, but human. Wait, human? He said in disbelief. 3 ships approached, marked with the insignia of the Earth colonial fleet. A voice came through the radio. This is Commander Rhea Solis of the ECF cruiser Vanguard. Identify yourself. You are carrying an unknown life form emitting forbidden energy. Stand down or we will open fire. Elias stared at the screen, heart pounding. Even humans were coming for Kale now. He looked back at the sleeping child, then at the flashing warning lights. He whispered to himself, "They think he's a threat. But they don't know he's just a child." He took a deep breath, gripping the controls. "If they want him," he muttered, "they'll have to go through me." The Horizon's engines roared to life again, light bursting from the thrusters, and as the human ships closed in, Elias made a choice that would forever mark him as a traitor to his own kind. The man who stood between humanity and a power the galaxy had long feared. Red lights filled the cabin of the Horizon. The computer's voice repeated over and over, "Warning, lock-on detected." Captain Elias Ward's hands tightened on the controls. 3 Earth colonial fleet ships were closing in, their weapons fully charged. The same people he once served were now aiming to destroy him. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Not today." Kyle stood beside him, small hands gripping the edge of the console. "They're humans," he said softly. "Why are they angry?" Elias looked down at him, heart aching. "Because they're afraid, kid. They don't understand what you are." Outside the nearest cruiser, Vanguard flashed its signal lights. "Surrender or be fired upon." Elias flicked on the comm. "Commander Solis, this is Captain Elias Ward of the ship Horizon. I'm carrying a child who needs protection. Stand down. He's not a threat." Static filled the line, then a cold female voice answered, "You've taken a classified alien specimen. By Earth law, you're under arrest. Release the being immediately." Elias's jaw tightened. "He has a name, Kale." The silence that followed was heavy. Then the commander said quietly, "You've changed, Ward. Don't make me do this." He cut the transmission and whispered, "You already are." The Horizon dived hard toward the nebula. Bright blue clouds surrounded them, thick and glowing like a living sea. Missiles flew past, disappearing into the gas. "Hold tight, Kale," Elias shouted as the ship shook violently. He weaved through the nebula, using its magnetic storms to confuse the fleet's sensors. But one shot grazed the hull, setting off sparks and smoke. Elias coughed, trying to keep control. "Come on, old girl, don't give up on me now." Kale's eyes glowed faintly. "I can help," he said, his voice shaking. "No," Elias snapped. "You'll burn yourself out again. Just stay down." Kyle lowered his head, whispering, "They don't see what you see in me?" Elias blinked. "What's that?" "That I'm alive." Something in the boy's words broke him. He'd fought pirates, smugglers, machines, but nothing hurt more than knowing his own people had lost their humanity. After minutes of high-speed chase, the Horizon broke free from the nebula, engines sputtering. The stars opened wide before them, but the Vanguard was waiting. A deep voice thundered through the comms. "Captain Ward, power down now. You can't escape." Elias looked at Kale. "Maybe not, but we can run faster than they expect." He rerouted all remaining power to the jump drive. The ship began to shake violently. "Jumping will tear us apart," the AI warned. Elias smirked. "We'll see." He slammed the activation switch. A blinding light filled the ship as they entered hyperspace. The stars stretched into lines of white fire. Kale clutched the seat, eyes wide but calm. Moments later, the light vanished. Silence. They had made it, but the dashboard flickered with red. The engines were half dead, the power core overheating. Elias leaned back, breathing hard. "We're clear. For now." Kale stared at the stars slowly forming outside. "They called you traitor," he said quietly. "Are you?" Elias looked out the window, lost in thought. Maybe to them, but not to what's right. Hours passed. The Horizon floated through deep space, hiding in the shadow of a massive asteroid. Elias patched the hull while Kale watched quietly, holding a metal cup of warm nutrient liquid. "Why did you help me?" the boy finally asked. Elias paused. "Because your mother asked me to." Kyle looked down, his small fingers curling around the cup. I remember her face. Only her crying. Elias sighed. She was brave. She gave everything so you could live. Don't ever forget that. Cale nodded slowly, his eyes glowing faintly blue again. Elias sat beside him. Listen, kid. What you did back there, the power you used, it's more than anyone's ever seen. The collectors want it. The fleet wants it, but me... He placed a hand on Cale's shoulder. I just want to make sure you grow up free. Kyle smiled faintly. Free sounds nice. Suddenly, the ship's sensors beeped again. Elias jumped to his feet. No way. Not already. The screen lit up, new contacts. Not human this time. Unknown. Shapes emerged from the asteroid's shadow. Sleek, silver ships unlike anything he'd ever seen. Their engines made no sound, their movement graceful like shadows in water. Kyle stood up, trembling. They're not collectors, he whispered. They're something older. Elias frowned. Older? Cale nodded. I can hear them. In my head. Before Elias could react, a deep, melodic voice filled the cabin. Not through the speakers, but directly in both their minds. Child of the first light, it said. You have awakened before your time. Elias looked around, panic rising. Who's there? Show yourself. A blinding white glow filled the cabin and a tall figure appeared, neither human nor alien, but something made of pure light and shadow. Cale stepped forward, unafraid. You know me? The figure's voice was calm, powerful. We knew your kind would return. And the human beside you, he has made the first choice of the new age. Elias blinked, confused. What choice? To protect life even when his own kind turned against him. The galaxy will remember. Then the light faded, leaving behind silence. The ships outside vanished as if they'd never existed. Elias looked at Cale, his hands trembling. What was that? Cale looked at him softly. The beginning of something much bigger. The cabin of the horizon was silent long after the light vanished. Captain Elias Ward stood frozen, hands still gripping the console, eyes wide with disbelief. The air felt different, heavy, charged, alive. Kyle sat quietly, staring at where the glowing figure had appeared moments ago. They were, like me, he whispered. Elias slowly exhaled. What were they, Cale, gods? The boy shook his head. No, they were echoes. From the first light? Elias frowned. And what exactly is the first light? Cale looked out the window. The stars shimmered faintly as if they were listening. It's where all life began. Not on a planet, but in the heart of a dying star. The first light gave birth to everything. To humans, to aliens, to all that breathes. It sleeps now, but it can wake again. Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine. And you? You're part of it? Cale nodded slowly. My mother was chosen to carry its spark. She didn't know it until the collectors found us. They wanted the power to make life, or destroy it. Elias turned away, running a hand through his hair. So they killed her, trying to control something they didn't understand. Kyle's eyes glowed faintly blue. They can't control the light, it chooses who it trusts. That's why it spoke to you too. Elias blinked. Me? Cale nodded. When you saved me, the light saw you. It marked you as a protector. Elias laughed bitterly. Protector? I'm a broken miner with an old ship and too many regrets. Kyle looked at him gently. Sometimes broken things carry the brightest light. For hours, the horizon drifted through quiet space. The engines hummed softly while Elias worked on repairs, though his mind wasn't on the tools. He kept hearing the figure's voice. The galaxy will remember. He didn't want to be remembered. He just wanted to keep the boy safe. But deep down, something inside him had changed. Far away, across the galaxy, things were changing too. In the collector hive, red lights blinked awake. Massive AI minds whispered to one another in a language of static and code. Energy pattern confirmed. The first light has reappeared. Deploy retrieval fleets. And in the Earth Colonial Command, Commander Rhea Solis stood in the war room, watching the same readings flicker on her screen. The energy Cale had released was spreading like fire across the stars. Captain Ward has gone rogue, an officer said. He's protecting the alien child. Rhea's jaw tightened. No, she whispered. He's protecting something far more dangerous. Back aboard the horizon, Kyle sat at the front window staring at the stars. Elias joined him, holding 2 cups of warm synth coffee. Here, Elias said, handing one to the boy. Kyle smiled softly. I don't really drink. But thank you, Elias chuckled. It's more about pretending life's normal for a minute. They sat together in silence. Outside, the stars shimmered like scattered embers. Then Kyle spoke. I feel them waking, Elias turned. Who? The ones like me? The old lights. The collectors tried to erase them long ago, but they hid. And now, because of what I did, they're starting to remember. Elias frowned. You mean there are more like you? Kyle nodded. Yes. Hidden in worlds across the galaxy, sleeping, waiting for the call. Elias rubbed his temple. If that's true, then every army out there is going to lose its mind. Kale looked up at him, his voice soft but sure. That's why they'll need you. Elias blinked. Me? The light doesn't need kings or generals, Kale said. It needs someone who believes life is worth saving. You do? For a long moment, Elias couldn't speak. He looked at the small boy, no, the being sitting beside him, and realized he wasn't just protecting Kale anymore. He was standing between creation and destruction. Suddenly, the ship shook violently. The lights dimmed and alarm screamed. Impact detected, the AI warned. Elias ran to the console. What hit us? The radar showed a large object moving fast. Not a ship, but a signal pulse. It wasn't physical. It was energy chasing them through space. It's the collectors, Elias said through clenched teeth. They found us again. Kale stood, eyes glowing brighter. Then we can't run anymore. What are you saying? Kale looked calm, determined. It's time the galaxy sees the light again. Before Elias could stop him, Kale pressed his palm against the cabin wall. The entire ship glowed blue. Every bolt, every wire, every piece of metal seemed to sing. Outside, the pulse struck, but instead of tearing them apart, it scattered into a storm of light. From the heart of the explosion, the horizon emerged untouched, wrapped in a shining aura that rippled across the void. Across countless systems, beings of every species looked up that night and saw it. A bright, living star blazing across the darkness. The first light had awakened. Elias stared in awe. What did you do? Kale smiled faintly. I reminded the universe what hope looks like. And in that moment, far from any world, a human and an alien child together lit the stars, and the galaxy began to change. Space burned with light. Where once there had been darkness, now a wave of blue fire rolled across the stars. The rebirth of the first light. Every scanner, every radar in the galaxy screamed at once. And in that brightness stood one small ship, the Horizon. Captain Elias Ward stared out the window, his hands trembling on the controls. The ship's panels glowed with living energy. Kale stood beside him, his eyes like twin suns. You did this, Elias whispered. The whole galaxy's watching. Kale nodded softly. They had forgotten what light feels like. I reminded them. But before the warmth of wonder could settle, the alarms returned. Red. Violent. The collectors had arrived. A swarm of black ships filled the void, thousands strong. Their leader's voice, cold and metallic, echoed through the comms. Surrender the source. The light belongs to us, Elias laughed bitterly. You want the light? You'll have to go through a human first. Kyle looked up at him. You can't fight them all. I don't have to, Elias said, his voice steady. I just have to buy you time. He switched the ship to manual control and armed the rail cannons, ancient, rusty, but still alive. The Horizon dove straight into the swarm. The first blast shook the stars. Elias fired round after round, cutting through the black ships. Kale held the power back, trying not to lose control, his light pulsing like a heartbeat. But there were too many enemies. They're surrounding us, Elias shouted. Kale placed a glowing hand on the console. Then let me help. No, Elias barked. You use that power again, it'll kill you. Kyle's voice was calm. If I don't, it will kill everyone. Elias looked at him, the boy's small face glowing in the dark. Brave, calm, pure. For a second he saw her again. The alien mother he had promised to protect. He swallowed hard. All right, kid. Let's do it together. Kyle smiled faintly and reached out his hand. Elias hesitated only a moment before taking it. The moment their fingers touched, light exploded. The ship became something else. Half metal, half living. Energy flowed through the walls like blood. Elias felt it coursing through him, connecting him to Kale's mind. He saw visions, the first light being born in a dying star, ancient beings shaping worlds, the first breath of life that united every species before time itself. And now, that same power rested in the hands of a human and a child. Together they unleashed it. Beams of blue fire tore through the collector fleet. One by one, the dark ships shattered into dust. Their leader's voice screamed through the comms, "You cannot stop evolution." Elias roared back, "This isn't evolution, or it's extinction." With a final surge, Kale's light burst outward. The entire fleet vanished in a storm of brilliance, leaving only silence behind. But victory came at a cost. The cabin lights dimmed. Kale's glow began to fade. "Kale?" Elias said, kneeling beside him. "Stay with me, kid." "We did it." Kyle smiled weakly. "The light is safe now. It's in you too." "What are you talking about?" Elias asked, voice breaking. "The light needed a guardian," Kale whispered. "Now it has one." His small hand rested over Elias's heart. "Don't let them forget what humans are." Elias gripped his hand. "You can't leave, not after all this." Kale's eyes softened. "I'm not leaving. I'm going home." The light around him brightened one last time. Warm, peaceful, like sunrise after endless night. Then it faded into a million tiny sparks that drifted through the ship, into the stars, into everything. Elias sat in the silence, tears falling freely. Weeks later, reports spread across every system. The collector fleet gone, the strange blue light still glowing faintly in the outer rim, and a single human ship, last seen vanishing into deep space. Some called Elias Ward a traitor, others a savior, but to those who saw that light, he was something else entirely, a reminder of what it meant to be human. Far from all known worlds, the horizon drifted near a newborn star. Elias stood at the window staring into its warmth. He felt the pulse of the light still beating inside him, gentle and alive. Kale was gone, but not lost. Every breath, every heartbeat of the universe carried a piece of him. Elias smiled faintly. "You did it, kid. You changed everything." He reached for the console and recorded one final message. "To whoever finds this, remember what we fought for. Not power, not glory, just the right to care, to protect, to hope. The light isn't in the stars. It's in us." He looked one last time at the endless sea of stars, no longer dark, but alive with color. And as the horizon disappeared into the glow of the newborn sun, the galaxy whispered his name, the human who carried the light.